firemen come in with their high pressure hoses and they're starting to spray water around and this thing goes flying across the room under a high pressure hose. You got 29 days worth of documents, unbacked up documents on this thing. It suggests it's your business, it's your call, but think about it. Think about what can happen that will damage your business, and then where do you need to go? How do you get there? Planning for many eventualities, and I purposely used a plural. Sometimes those eventualities will be not just one at a time, but multiple eventualities. Several practices of the plan. And understand, by the way, that you're not in a vacuum. That's another reason why this group here today, really, when we finish in a few minutes, take time to introduce yourselves to other people. You are not alone. Work with other groups within your building, within your community, within wherever, so that you're working together. And when you develop and they figure out things as they're going in, there isn't a command center. Well, BFP needs to understand, when you come to this building in this kind of an event, there will be a command center. Perhaps you should have a commander sitting there. Someone in authority, liaisoning with the companies and with the building management at the command center. It's a learning experience for all of us. Anybody that's going to be involved in the exercise of information, crisis management, we're not alone. That's one of the biggest things that I think this group, out of this presentation today, I hope that you'll understand it's an art and not a science. We can work together to get better, all of us. None of us have all of the answers. So, now, this is the last slide. And so,
hard part of coming up with the crisis management plan is to think about which one's first. What would be the first priority? What kind of scenario would think about and prepare for? For our situation, we just started off with a recent crisis which happened in Bangkok, Thailand. There were military and political unrest, and one of our company head office there was not accessible for some time, and the building beside that office get burned down. So what was the experience? It was a learning process because during the time, people doesn't know where to go. People doesn't know how do we be able to continue our essential business processes, especially, processing customer orders, delivering the goods, collection, billing, etc. So
I can kind of run this the way I want to. This is one of the nice things about this. And right now, what I'd like to do is not answer your question, but open it up for discussion. How does a company, how do you, as you have worked through your thoughts, whether you have a company policy right now or not, but get some ideas. How do we help him figure out what the priority disaster, the priority situation, how do we handle that?
Well, basically, you cannot choose which is the priority. But the best thing there is, like you, the reason why we attended this is, we also had a similar problem in Thailand. The headquarters of the Red Shirt is right down at the building of our head office, APO office. So they were not able to report to work, but we were able to communicate with them. And that is one thing that we want to establish. The fire, earthquake, we all already have drills. And we have a strategy also for H1N1. The reason why basically all of this group came from our company is I want to prepare them more or less to a situation wherein, like what happened to Taiwan, suddenly there's a barricade along our building. How do we go? Where do we go? What are the things that we will need, that we will prepare?
Manager of a small airline that flies to El Nido. Going back to the question earlier with the gentleman beside me, I think in terms of we have some practices in the aviation industry, and we're also closely allied with Shell Philippines because we're an accredited fixed-wing operator for Shell. And we have some practices of the safety management system, or the ERP, Emergency Response Plan. So basically in the ERP, we bring in all the key management people and go into scenario, just brainstorming about scenarios. So that's how you generate the types of crisis that you could potentially be faced with. And in terms of safety, the safety management system is basically also the same concept where each department sorts of generates all the potential risks in its operations, and then just basically thinks of ways to control or to eliminate those risks. And then it's a live system where it's reviewed regularly, or if a new risk that was not thought of initially crops up. So you just add that to your safety management system and make sure that the controls are in place. And then every time there's a new risk that comes in, just add to that water for an indefinite time. Would you have any idea about that? Because somebody told me that the plastic sorts of seeps into the water after a long period.
I have heard that. I do not have, as I sit here right now, I don't have, oh, well, you can do it for 6 months or 3 months or whatever. I would recommend that you freshen the water from time to time. But has anybody heard what kind of time constraints there are on that?
We have shelf life.
We have our business continuity BCP plan. It's always in the office. So what we did is to have a duplicate copy. It's always on the trunk of your car. So be it in the office.
Understand that often communications will be hampered. So think about alternate ways of getting hold of people and reaching out to people beyond texting and cell towers, especially in storms and so on. I get frustrated virtually every day at my residence for whatever reason. Within my residence, I have a hard time getting a signal, and it doesn't seem to matter how much cursing I do that I can't help the airwaves. But it is something to be concerned about, and those are the kinds of things that when you were talking about the different planning from an IT perspective or so on, it's easy for us to say, well, we'll just call everybody. Well, what happens if the phones are gone? What happens if this? What happens if that? What happens if... So it is kind of an important thing to just have some time to sit down and think your way through. And that's hard when we're trying to run a business and trying to make a profit. It's hard to sit back and say, okay, look, we're just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about these issues. I got a sales call, I got to make it. Stop. Think. And you're probably saying, well, yeah, Steve, look, that's very easy for you to say. Well, I mean, when I go back to the office today, I know that my boss is going to be asking me, well, how many contracts, not contacts, how many contracts did you bring back from that presentation? I'm going to say, I didn't bring back any contracts. The company had a big cabinet like this. It was a big filing cabinet. They had a big sign on it that said battle box. Well, the battle box was when an earthquake, when a fire or whatever, that was set up in their crisis management room, which was about this size, because it's a call center that has thousands of people working for it. And everything that a crisis management team needs is already stored in that, what they call the battle box. paper, there's pens, there's markers, there's whiteboards, everything that they need. Those kinds of things, a list of stuff that you need. We can help provide that. We can help you develop where a disaster recovery site may be. You know, for example, from an IT perspective, we're recommending that your disaster recovery site not just be the building down the street in case a fire or something happens in your building, but what happens if the whole metro area is devastated? Maybe you need to go to Clark or someplace like that. I don't know. But those kinds of issues, and every business is going to be different. And then how do you practice so that your key managers, if you try to develop a practice scenario, what we did yesterday was we had a big scenario of the employees, and the vast majority of people were simply told, okay, it's an earthquake, take cover. Well, everybody goes under their desk, then we start the evacuation, and then things are inserted. Only a few people know what's going to happen. It involves calling back to the main office in Chicago, Illinois, and calling this person over here, the regional headquarters, kind of like what you were talking about with the group in Thailand. You know, what happens when you can't reach your home office? How do you do things? Because you know the home office in New York or Thailand or wherever, they hear about an earthquake, they're going to want to know when are you coming back online? They want to know how your people are. How do you document your people? We can help practice that. We can help you work your way through because of the experience that you've got. So I appreciate you letting me talk a little bit. Often companies can do that, but there are ways you need outside help. You're not by yourself. When she was asked a question dealing with why did the hostages on the bus die, and the question was something along the lines of, from an international organization, something along the lines of, well, did any of the Philippine police shoot the hostages or kill the hostages? And her response was, which was not a bad response, well, excuse me, it wasn't an inaccurate response, was, well, maybe, or something along those lines. By the time that was broadcast internationally, it became that the Justice Secretary of the Philippines said that there may have been friendly fire that killed some hostages. That wasn't what she said, but that was the way it was reported. So now it looks even worse for us than what it did before. It wasn't great before, but now it looks even worse. And that wasn't what she said, but because she wasn't careful enough in her choice of words, it was changed. And so what she meant to say, I think, was, we don't have the evidence of that yet. We're still awaiting. Because it could have been, and I still don't know. I'm just offering this as an opinion. It could have been. Mendoza killed everybody, but during the storming of the bus, some police bullets hit a victim, but they weren't fatal. I don't know. I don't know what the evidence showed, which is the point that she should have stressed. We still await the evidence. We don't know, and I'm not. When you have reporters' microphones in your face, the Philippines is a unique, well, maybe not a unique, but is an interesting environment from the media perspective. And I'll offer this. It's not necessarily negative or positive, it's just it is. For those of you who have traveled to the United States, if you've gone to San Francisco, does anybody remember what the San Francisco newspapers are called? How about Los Angeles? You got the LA Times. In Washington, D.C., you have the Washington Post, that's the paper everybody takes. The number 2 paper in Washington, D.C., which is like way down here, is called the Times. In the Philippines, or in Manila, well, and actually in other places throughout the Philippines too, but in Manila, there are at least, 5 major English language newspapers, all of which needs the story very, very rapidly and will be as aggressive as they can be. In the United States, in major markets, you generally only have one newspaper. people outside the Philippines don't have the context of how, as the U.S. Ambassador Kenny used to call the media environment here, vibrant. Americans in most other countries don't have a context of just how vibrant the environment is here, how aggressive and how, for lack of a better way of saying it, pushy reporters here and editors need to be to get information out to the public to sell things. In fact, I think you were talking earlier about if you read the papers, I think you mentioned this, if you read the papers, you'd think that the country was having disasters all the time. Well, because they got to sell newspapers. As long as you understand the needs of our media partners, I'll call them partners because we got to get information out to the public as well. We want the public to see what we're doing, that we are in charge, that we do know what we're doing. We can help them get that information out, but we have to make sure that we are taking command of what's being said. And we understand where what we're saying may lead us. We've got to make sure we're saying the truth. But the way we say it, what we say, needs to be controlled. We have to think. I'll offer this. If you remember, I'm going to just kind of pretend that I'm going to role play here a little bit. Shortly after 9/11, the crisis management exercises can be 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hours, can be reduced, they can be just an outline. We could have a briefing, discussion, and then let you guys do what you want, or they can go over several days. We can also, especially if you are a business, for example, if you're in the semiconductor business where several businesses within Cavite or within Laguna want to get together and walk, work through issues, walk through issues. If you're 2 or 3 businesses within a building, we can work through issues. So yeah, we will not restrict ourselves, oh, well, there's a group that wants to do it. That helps to spread the cost a little bit too. So there are imaginative ways of getting the end state. And actually, it's kind of helpful if we had this group.
The affirmation forms, which are at the back of the notebook. Should give a token of appreciation to our speaker this morning for lending his great expertise to the topic that we have, which is very relevant today. So thank you, Stephen.
Please.